book, How to Teach Grammar, Scott Thornbury introduces the E factor and the A factor as a very simple and very practical way to evaluate grammar activities that we may or may not use with our students. The E factor stands for efficiency, and the A factor stands for appropriacy. In this course, I'll take you through the E factor and the A factor in a little bit more detail, and then we'll take a look at different sample grammar activities and see how to apply these two factors to evaluate these activities for use with different types of classes. Let's get started. The E in the E factor stands for efficiency. Efficiency means to do something in the best possible way, so with the highest quality, with the least amount of time and effort. Why is efficiency so important when it comes to grammar teaching? There are three key reasons. The first is grammar is not the only thing that we have to teach our students, and it's not the only thing they have to learn. They have to learn all of the language systems, so pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, and discourse, and they have to learn the four language skills: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The second reason is that we have a very limited time with our students. If our class is 50 minutes long and we meet twice a week, that's all we have to work with our students on all aspects of the English language. Finally, we also have limited time as teachers to prepare our lessons. We don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours to prepare for those two 50-minute classes that we might have. There are three other E words that we can use to further understand this idea of efficiency when it comes to our grammar activities. The first one is economy. Economy simply means the shorter amount of time we spend on something, the better it is. So we should have very short and clear instructions. Our resources should be very simple to make and simple to implement, and so on. The second E is ease. This simply means that the easier it is to set up an activity, the better that activity is. The final E is efficacy. Efficacy simply means how effective is your activity in terms of student learning. So, do the students learn what you want them to learn? Do they retain what you want them to retain? And are they motivated by the activity? I'm going to put you to work applying the E factor to some selected grammar activities. For each of the activities given in the chart in section 2 of your handout, first of all, read the activity and make sure you understand it. Secondly, rate the activity using the E factor. So is the activity weak, moderate, or strong in terms of the E factor? Third, why? So why did you give it a weak, moderate, or strong rating? And finally, what would you change in the activities that you gave a weak rating? How could you make that E factor stronger for those particular activities? Let's take a look at how you rated each of the activities given in section 2 of your handout in terms of its E factor. So its efficiency, economy, ease, and efficacy. Letter A, paragraph editing. You should have rated the E factor for this activity as strong. It hits all of the E's here, and you don't need to change anything for this activity. Letter B, sort the sentences. For this activity, you should have an E factor rating of weak. This activity simply takes way too much time to prepare. You've got all these strips to create, and you have to group the strips together and make sure you haven't mixed anything up. It just takes way too much time. So to fix this, instead of having your sentences on strips, just have them all on a worksheet. And students label each sentence on the worksheet according to the language structure that it uses. Letter C, individual workbook exercises. This activity should also have an E factor rating of weak, but for a slightly different reason. It's weak, first of all, because it creates a lot of marking for the teacher, so you have to take everybody's workbooks home after class and mark them. It's also weak because it's not overly interesting or motivating for the students, so the efficacy rating is very low. How can you spruce this one up? First of all, don't take the marking home. Have students mark the exercises in class. And second of all, figure out some way to take the activity out of the workbook so students have to interact with each other or interact with you as the teacher in some way. Letter D, the fly game. This activity should have an E rating of strong. It's very economical, it's very easy to put together, and it's simply lots of fun. It's very high energy and students get very excited to do this type of activity. Letter E, grammar from a reading text. This activity also has an E factor rating of strong. It's very economical, it's very easy to put together, and because you're looking at the grammar structures in context, it's a very meaningful activity for students. Letter F, error correction. For this one, you probably have an E factor rating of either weak or moderate. Collecting errors over the space of 1 to 2 weeks is not really economical. It has a simple fix, however. Simply collect the errors that students make over 1 or 2 classes, and then you have a really good activity. Letter G, sentence Pictionary. You probably also rated this one as either weak or moderate. It's not overly economical in terms of time, simply because it's very time-consuming for students to guess the sentence exactly. So there's a couple of changes you can make to the activity to improve on this. First of all, instead of requiring the sentence exactly, you can simply require that students get the language structure exactly, and you can allow a little bit of difference on the other parts of the sentence. The other option is to put a time limit on it. So if students have not guessed the sentence within, say, 1 minute, you stop it, nobody gets a point, and you move on to the next student. Letter H, student grammar quizzes. This activity generates a lot of debate amongst teachers. Some teachers think this activity is okay, and they give it a strong E factor. Other teachers rate this as weak or moderate because they're not very confident in the accuracy of the grammar quiz questions that students generate. So to get over this concern, one of the things you can do is just make sure that you monitor the questions that students come up with, check them for accuracy, and make sure that students don't pass the quiz on to another pair until you've actually done that edit on it. Letter I, word order. Without any doubt, this activity should have a very low E factor rating, so you should have this one as weak. Very obviously, it takes a lot of time and effort on your part as the teacher to take sentences, cut them up, and take all the words in the sentences and cut those up, and then make sets of that for every single student or pair of students. There's a simple fix to this, however. Instead of giving students each word on a separate card, simply give them a worksheet that has all of the words on it, and tell them that they must make 10 sentences and use every single one of the words up with those 10 sentences. Letter J, which side? This one has an E factor rating of strong. It's very economical, it's very easy to do, and because there's a lot of movement, it's actually a lot of fun for students to do. You may have noticed when we were exploring the E factor or efficiency that we didn't talk very much about our students or learners. This is where the A factor comes in. A stands for appropriacy. This is an evaluation of a grammar activity from the perspective of the students. Is this a good activity for this particular group of students? There are a lot of factors that we need to look at when it comes to appropriacy. Here are some of them. We need to look at learner age, learner language level, the size of the class, so how many students do you have a monolingual or a multilingual class, and what are the learner needs? Why are they taking your class? Do they need to pass an exam? Are they looking to get into university? Or are they taking English for their career? Appropriacy doesn't stop there. There's even more. We need to look at the materials and resources we have available and that our students would enjoy using. We need to consider our students' previous life experiences. We also need to consider their previous experiences learning English. We need to look at their culture, what's their cultural background. And finally, we need to look at the educational context. What type of language program or school are we in? I'm going to put you to work again, this time applying the A factor. In the chart in section 4 of your handout, I've given you descriptions of different classes. What I'd like you to do is recall the grammar activities from section 2 and select 2 of those activities that have a strong A factor for that particular class. And then select 1 activity that has a very weak A factor for that particular class. Class A. For this class, 2 activities that have a very strong A factor are the fly game and which side. These are both strong in terms of the A factor for the same reason. These are highly active games that require the students to get up and move around. So this age group will find these really fun. An activity that has a weaker A factor is the grammar quizzes that students make, so student grammar quizzes. This activity is probably beyond the attention span of this age group. Class B. 2 activities that have a strong A factor for this group of students are error correction and grammar from a reading text. Both of these allow students to do a lot of independent work and kind of problem solve their approach to grammar. The error correction is highly personalized, and the grammar from a reading text can be made specific to the student's professions or the student's interests. An activity that has a weaker A factor here would be something like the fly game. This might be a little bit too frivolous, I guess is the best word, for this group of students. Class C. 2 activities that have a strong A factor rating for this group of students are paragraph editing and grammar from a reading text. In both of these grammar activities, students are working with the language in a context that is very similar to that which is found in a university context. So there's a lot of relevancy here for these students. An activity that has a weaker A factor rating would be something like which side. This is simply too easy and once again a little bit too frivolous for this group of students. Class D. 2 activities that have a strong A factor rating for this group of students are sort the sentences and word order. Sort the sentences really focuses on identifying language structures, and word order focuses on accuracy. Both of these are skills that students need in an exam preparation class. An activity with a lower A factor rating would be something like the fly game. Class E. 2 activities that have a strong A factor rating for this group of students are which side and sort the sentences. Which side is a fun activity. Because these students are here for a fairly short time, they're going to want to have a little bit of fun. Sort the sentences is good for a high beginner class because it gets them starting to distinguish between some of the language structures in English. An activity with maybe a lower or a weaker A factor rating for this group of students would be something like individual workbook exercises. These students are here to focus on communication rather than written work. You may not agree with all of the A factor ratings that I gave you. There are, of course, a lot of different answers or a lot of different possibilities here. The key thing is to realize that each class has a certain set of characteristics, and you need to select activities that meet those characteristics as best as possible. You can also take activities with a weaker A factor rating and adapt them so that they have a stronger A factor rating for that particular group of students. As you're planning your grammar lessons and selecting your grammar activities, take a few minutes to evaluate those activities using the E factor and the A factor. Are your activities efficient, and are your activities appropriate for that group of students?